July 18th. Reading of the district mission statement. We promise to provide a supportive environment where unique learning experience empower all for their chosen life adventure. Item number 3. We are going to remove 9G from the agenda since Laura was not able to make the meeting tonight. So the motion will not include, the agenda will not include 9G. Are there any additional items for the agenda? Okay, we have approval for the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Elke. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. Number 5, recognition of visitors in open forum. I don't believe we have anybody signed in. We have a few members here for the reports and presentations. So let's move on to item number 6, reports and presentations. A is school bus transportation.
Mr. Tim.
Yes. You'll pick this microphone.
Yes.
And you wait till it turns green. Or the blue. There it is. I wanted to take a few moments to say thank you for letting me have this time. We're currently looking for several bus drivers, and I want to bring you up to speed what we're doing to do that. We've been, we have banners out in high traffic locations in order to try to drum up some help. Yard signs out in people's yards so that we can hopefully help. Wendy did a nice social media, sent out a blast or whatever you call those. She did a nice job for us. We're currently just ending the Wasika Fair. We spent, we had a booth over there. I spent 25 hours over there trying to drum up help. Next weekend we are doing a Drive the Bus event over in Wasika. It's going to be a closed course event. You're all welcome to come, get behind the wheel of the bus and take it around a closed course with a licensed driver. So hopefully we can get some word out there that it's not that big and not that scary. So we're doing that. We did the St. Clair Parade. We're doing the Wasika or the Waldorf Parade, the Pepperton Parade. I have yard signs out in Waldorf. Word of mouth, we're trying to drum up help. Late April, early May, the corporation had a incentive for the Type 3 drivers to become full licensed bus drivers. So that's what we're doing. We're pounding the ground pretty hard. We have human resource people. We've never had those before. They're pounding the ground as hard as they can. Help is hard to find. So if you know anyone, if you'd like to try, please come. So, also tonight I'd like to, well, I need to start exploring options. I have to have a plan B. So I just want to let you know that I'm going to be working on those. And hopefully I get a little time next school board meeting so that we can possibly explain those options to you so that it's not a surprise to you or a surprise to anybody else when it comes down to it. And the first day of school rolls around and it's not the traditional way of doing things. So, if you got any questions, I'm certainly welcome to answer those.
How many drivers do you need for the year, or just like on a daily term, and then where are you at with numbers currently?
I'm looking for about 5 drivers.
That's just for our district?
Just my district, just our district, I'm sorry. I get pretty possessive. Yes, I'm looking for about 5.
And the requirement's 18 and up, and
18 and up, able to pass a physical, clean driving record, able to pass the required tests. Yep. So, nothing too strenuous. I think it's more of a scare, or I don't want that sort of thing, as opposed to the difficulty of getting the tests done and getting things done.
Have you approached coaches? The coaches?
Coaches, yes. Ryan and I had approached coaches about Christmas time. We did get Nick James to come help us. He's only willing to help us with trips, not routes. So, and you can understand that he's got a full-time job. So, but that's one person, and that helps a lot. I appreciate him, and he's doing a great job for us.
about like teachers at the end of the day.
Teachers at the end of the day, Wendy and I, we were talking 2 weeks ago. We had opened it up that we were going to bring the bus up to the school for the driver, pick it up and take it home with us so that they didn't have to have that extra time. This, Wendy had mentioned that the school was able to work with those teachers to flex some of their time so that they could come in and come out as the route would allow them to. We can adjust that route a little bit so that they do get in earlier, and I can't really do much about getting home later, but we can start it out 5-10 minutes earlier and get the bus here by 8 so that they could have that extra time coming in. So we have not yet had any takers on.
I was just going to also say we do have a paid training program. So when people do come in and they're studying to pass, there's 3 or 4 tests depending on if you get your air brakes endorsement or not. And we have all kinds of training materials, and we actually pay people to study so they can pass those tests. And then we also have the paid training for behind the wheel. And we've gotten very good at successfully training people, getting them through with reasonable ease. They're able to come in and do that. You know, you'll see a lot of places where they advertise like hiring bonus. That's the quickest way to offend your longtime drivers that have been here and loyally serving, to give someone else, you know, $1,000 or something just off the cuff. So the way that we balance that is we have this paid training program, so you're actually working those hours, you're getting paid for them. It's one of the things we've done to balance it. Other ideas or things, we are definitely open. We are truly giving this our all.
What is the time commitment typically? Like in, just like in the
Time
morning,
commitment,
like your daily route, the average.
I'd like people there about 6:45 and they get done about, well, the last one gets here about 8:15.
It's about an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
And we pay minimum 2 hours
Right,
paid.
we pay a 2-hour flat rate for that. In the afternoon, we leave the curb here at 3:15. I like my drivers at the curb by 3, so we get away from the foot traffic. Last bus rolls in approximately 4:20. And again, we pay 2 hours.
Any more questions for Palmer? We look forward to maybe seeing you again next month, and hopefully we have some solutions. It sounds like it could be a challenging situation. So,
I'll put you on the agenda for next month, Tim.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks for the update.
Yes, thank you.
On to item 6B, Superintendent Report.
It's been busy around here lately. Construction's going well. It's fun to see their progress. I heard from SiteLogic the other day, I think that was Friday, they figure they're about 54% done with the project. So that was good to hear. I did send out a report last week that there is talk that our chiller is running behind, even though we ordered it in December. But we've talked to the company and said you have to have something temporary here, so we have a dehumidified school before the start of school in fall. We're still waiting to hear more back on whether they're gonna move up their delivery date or if they're gonna have a temporary chiller here. Ceilings are going in. Hopefully, we're able to start cleaning the classrooms the end of this week, beginning of next week. So everything's starting to really come together with the project. Preliminary numbers for a weight room expansion. I got a few more numbers today. It looks like that would be about $85,000. Dave Gibson will explain that to Mike Dashner tomorrow when he's here for a construction meeting. So we'll have more information on that tomorrow afternoon. I'm supposed to give Dave a call after he talks to Mike also. We've been doing a lot of interviewing lately. So we've hired a high school principal, Jake Hager is his name, pending background check and school board approval, which is part of the personnel staff changes tonight. Then AD, Dean of Students, we had 2 interviews today. We did 3 interviews last week, so I'll be making an offer to a candidate either later tonight or tomorrow morning. Director of Teaching and Learning, I'll be making an offer to a candidate either later tonight or tomorrow morning after working through some contract stuff with the negotiating team on the school board. And then we have 4 candidates, possibly 5, that will be interviewing for school social workers on Thursday morning. And we're still looking for a high school science teacher, high school special education teacher, and a high school ag and business teacher. Also been working with Tom Watson and Palmer Bus Service to get that contract completed, which we were able to work through an agreement and that's coming up on the agenda also in a few minutes. Safe routes to school, I talked to Clinton about that. That is on its way back to the state by the end of July in order for it to be reapproved by the state because it's changed so many times. And they'll possibly get started with that project this fall or early next spring. So it's just been kind of crazy busy around here. So, any questions for me?
So as far as the project, did you say, is the timing, is it on schedule,
It's on schedule as of right now,
besides that chiller?
besides that chiller.
Okay.
Which chiller is it? I mean, which areas would that be dehumidifying?
Most of the building.
So when you say you want either a temporary or the actual chiller here before school starts, are you talking before the students come in or are you talking before the staff comes in?
Before staff comes in.
Okay.
That August 19th date is still the date we're pushing for.
Do we have a contingency if they're not going to bring in a temporary chiller if the other one doesn't come in?
There's something in the paperwork, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Okay.
Dave Gibson from SiteLogic and I sent a letter to the company last week.
Okay.
Any more questions for Jeremy?
What, the teaching positions, what's our, because it's starting to get kind of late for some of those. What are our contingencies if you cannot find somebody? Because, I mean, we have our schedule already set up for next year, or are we still in flux because we don't know if we're going to get the like the ag business teacher and,
Right. High school special education, we could adjust caseloads if we absolutely have to. That would be last resort for us. Ag business, I had a teacher email me letting me know that there's an application coming in for that.
Okay.
Whether it's the right person or not, I don't know. And then Jake, the new high school principal, has been reaching out to some different people about science also. So we're still working on reaching out, trying to figure out what we can do to fill those positions.
okay.
One more thing is I will be out of the building tomorrow and Wednesday at a high reliability schools training with Mike Bearding, Jeff Adams, Andrew Kronbach, and myself.
Anything else for Jeremy? All right, let's move on to 6C, technology presentation, Mike Bearden.
Can I have a clicker?
What you gonna do?
For his computer? No?
Okay, let me see how this thing works. Okay, perfect. Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm going to give you a brief rundown over the Minnesota Student Data Privacy Law, which is a law, excuse me, that I had brought up at a board meeting a couple months back when it was still in its infancy. It is now law in Minnesota. So here's me. I'm Mike Birding. I'm here because I think staff, students, and parents in the community have a right to know the things that are in the law and how it applies to schools so we can be clear and transparent. There's my contact details. HF 2353. So this is the law when we say Minnesota Student Data Privacy Law. It amends Minnesota Law 2020-1332. There's a brief timeline. It was signed by Governor Walz on 5/22, and it affects the 22-23 school year forward. If you look through the slides, every single one of the slides on the bottom has a link to the actual language of the law. So Minnesota does not really have standard student data privacy. You'll find that other states, such as like California, I think even Wisconsin has student data privacy laws that are in place, or agreements that are sent out to technology vendors. So basically, they're not allowed to operate in those states unless they agree with that. Minnesota did not have one. And groups like MASA were pushing to get one of those put in. However, we're seeing this step here where a lot of it does come back to the schools to say, we need to make sure that we're at least auditing and keep track of the data that's getting sent out. So with that being said, the sale of student data is of paramount concern. We know that tech companies sell data. So with this law, they can't do that. We need to make sure of that. And then schools need to maintain ownership of the data. So if we share data with a third party, we say, hey, we want that data back, or we want you to delete it, they have to comply. So there is that push on the vendors as well. So here's the requirements. Compliance with laws and regulations. So those are the laws that are already in place. And this new law. Responsible disclosure of breaches. So if a vendor that we partner with, say hypothetically, Infinite Campus suffers a data breach, they have to let us know. And then we have an obligation to let families know as well. So agreements with LEAs, including sub-processors. So that sub-processor thing there is if we, for instance, I'm going to pick on Infinite Campus again, share information with the Infinite Campus. And Infinite Campus sends some of that information to Payrix, which I think is what they use for payments. If that sub-processor Payrix has a data breach, they also need to let Infinite Campus know to let us know. So there's that. And then again, ensure ownership. They need to make sure we own our data. Here's the requirements for the schools. So we need to have a list within 30 days of the start of the school year. And I put a star there because we don't know if it's before the start or if it's within 30 days after the start. Ours is already pretty much prepared, but this list will have the list of the tool, the type of tool that it is. Legally, we're supposed to put in information for curriculum, testing, and assessments, although we've gone a little bit further with that, just to make sure that if there are legal changes, that we're prepared for that, and to be as transparent as we possibly can be. So ours is pretty much already done. And then within that, we need to say what the tool is, what data elements they're using, the terms of service, the privacy policy, and any contracts that we have. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So here's some more. Within that law, we have a duty and a right to monitor devices for educational use. But the law does say if we do monitor a device, pretty much any piece of data that's on that device, whether it's the physical location of a device, whether it's data that is on a device or in an account that is run by us, we have, if we use that and detect imminent threat to life or safety, we have to notify the parents within 72 hours. So we do have a tool that we use with that. It's called BARC. And typically what we've done with that is we filter that. So if we get a notification that something bad is happening, whether someone's in crisis or whether there's foul language going on, our administration will get a notification, and then we filter it, and then we reach out. So we've been essentially doing this in general, but now we have a more formal process that has some language that we just share with parents in the event that this takes place. The concern is false negatives. We're still working to figure out if we find something that is not imminent threat to life or safety, if we do need to notify. But I would say err on the side of caution and say we saw something that appeared by our filters to be imminent threat. It wasn't, and that would cover us as well. So we just have 72 hours to let people know. We have to create a data privacy office, which I am volunteering for. So I will be the data privacy office. Make sure you lock your computers. Report of breaches, that's no different. If we have, or any one of our vendors has a data breach, we have an obligation to let families, students, and the community know. Managing platforms to ensure proper ownership and destruction of data. Again, we'll touch on that a little bit with a data privacy agreement, and then compliance with other state and federal laws. So when we look at things like the monitoring and reporting 72 hours within, so the Safe and Supportive Schools Act requires us to report on bullying and cyberbullying. So it does make it a little bit of a difficulty to monitor all of these pieces when the law, other laws are also saying that we can't, or we have to respond. So we do have to kind of walk that fine line between, the laws that we have to apply as well. So here's the impacts. So the impacts on students, there's going to be more vetting for privacy. We started this process a couple years back, just basically going through all the tools we're using, viewing the privacy policies, just making sure that we're making good choices with student data. Now it is the law that we do have to do that. So we will continue doing that work, and it'll be a little more intense, I would say. More vetting for educational purpose. So as we vet these apps, we're going to be making sure that they follow our EEE framework, and then protection of digital and physical and mental health. So I included some laws up there. All of those are federal that we have to be part of. we have to make sure we're continually monitoring and filtering for those. So there's the Safe and Supportive Schools Act, which is making sure schools are safe. SIPA, make sure minors don't get access to things that they shouldn't. COPPA, kids under 13 can't sign up for things. Then FERPA is keeping student data private. So you can look at those at your leisure. Impacts on staff. So again, more vetting for privacy, training on data privacy. So we've done a little bit over the last year with data privacy training. However, this is going to be more tailored to the safeguards that we can put in place for preparing teachers to have accounts for students for whatever. Train them on the process, train them on the impacts, the ramifications, and then definitely set up what those expectations are. And then again, continue training on those acts there that we still need to comply with. More scrutiny. The process for using a tool in the classroom for a teacher is going to be more difficult. So that is one of the things that actually got taken out of the law before they signed it. They wanted us to not have the ability to use a new tool in the middle of a school year. So in the event of an emergency contingency, we can quickly vet the app and get it out. However, it's not ideal. So the sooner we can get information out to families, the better. So I also have that list that's there. So anybody would be able to go and see what tools we're using, what we're using them for, what data it takes, and then monitoring for compliance. That'll be on me and the principals to make sure that we're doing our best to be in line with the new law. Impacts on parents. Again, vetting opens the door for conversations. All of everything that we're using in technology is going to be out there in the open. So what that says is feel free to come and ask. We've had an open door, but this is a little more explicit this way to say, yeah, I want you to come and talk to me about this. And then transparency for monitoring. Again, we'd filtered things like false positives with BARC. Now we won't. We will respond whether or not it is a false positive. So, maybe complicated at first, but it's for the greater good, teaching our youth about the digital footprint and protecting it will set them up for successful interactions. Okay, moving on. What are we doing? We created the list of tools, so that software inventory is on there. There's another sheet on there that's for a different law that's coming up. So if you do look at that, there's one that says inventory. That's the list of tools. There's another one that says GASB 96. That's for next year, but we are preparing it for this year. And yeah, there's that. Feel free to look at that. We do have the draft beginning of the year message. That has to be given by direct contact. So just putting it on the website is not good enough. We will have to either send out a bulk email, publish it in the newsletters, send out mailers, hand them out at conferences or open house. So it does have to be via direct contact, and that's our draft letter. Additional stuff. This is the draft letter for a situation in which we've monitored something on the student's device outside of the scope of just classroom management and instruction. So this would be if I look at BARC because something was flagged. We would have to share this within 72 hours. Okay, I already went over all that. So on here is the JWP data privacy agreement. So I drafted this in concert with one that was shared with MASA and their technology component group. I'm going to start engaging tech vendors with this and say, I need you to fill this out and sign it. This is the agreement that ties to the requirement to have contracts. What this will do is say that JWP owns the data and you will comply as a vendor with all of these pieces of the student data privacy law. And if they don't, it's a breach of the contract, and then we sever that relationship. So, yeah. This law just went into effect last week for this school year. For pre-kindergarten and kindergarten during the school year, there are screen time limits now, so we cannot use technology without engagement from teacher or other students. Again, it's vague language, but I think we get the gist of what they're trying to say is we just don't want kids having free time and playing games when they should be in school learning. So that applies to pre-K and kindergarten. If technology is needed from an IEP or 504, does not apply. Chances are they're using that for some sort of accommodation or modification, which is why they would do that. So MSBA has a model policy 524. We're reviewing a version of that tonight. And then there will be another version of it coming in, I'm assuming sometime this week. So the language of that has the student data privacy law added in there. Mr. Earlier and I went through and decided which of the alternative options made most sense for our requirements here. But they're also going to add language in for the pre-K and kindergarten law as well. Questions? That was a lot, and I apologize.
When you're looking at a vendor and they say that they will not sign our privacy policy, do you have plans in place to either say completely no to them or work with them with legal to get something?
Well, I don't have a plan yet because I don't know what that's, well, let me rephrase that. I'm working on a plan. I haven't had that situation yet. However, it depends on the necessity of that tool, right? So if we're working with a vendor and it's Infinite Campus and they say, no, we're not going to sign that, well, then that's going to bring up a conversation with legal. If we're looking at a tool like Extra Math, we'll find something else. Because if they want our business, they'll sign the agreement. So it will be a little bit of a challenge to get the agreement from vendors with whom we already have a relationship or we've already paid prior to the law going into place. However, I can't foresee a whole lot of tech vendors doing that to schools. And I don't think anybody else is in my cohort of tech directors is feeling that same way.
Are most of our people that we go through, other school districts use them too, so if they're say no to us, they're saying no to somebody, another one, they're gonna lose a ton of business, right?
It's definitely a possibility, yeah. And I see this student data privacy law as a stepping stone toward a general data privacy agreement. I can't speak for the legislators, but I think that's what us tech directors were hoping for, so we didn't have to do this work. It was like, if you want to operate in Minnesota, this is what you're going to do. Whereas now it's kind of, we have to weed through to find out which of these tools are going to comply. And like you said, we have that authority to, not do business with them. And it may cost us a year of a contract we may have already paid, but in an effort to keep student data safe, it might be worth it.
It kind of looks like the termination clause is, it doesn't give a time frame of how much notice. I think something like this, we need a really good termination clause in there if they do not provide the service that we want.
Yep, so the reason the termination clause is worded the way it is because when it comes to the use of technology tools in our schools, basically what we would do is if there's a direct order from a supervisor, such as the superintendent or a principal, that says do not use this tool, then you don't use that tool. We haven't had that situation, but the termination on that would just be a point of like, okay, we know we're in a contract, we've paid you, but we're just not going to use it. We're going to just shut off access to it. We're going to block it on the firewall. This will not be used in our building, and we'll ride the contract out. As far as getting out of the contract, that's definitely where legal would have to be in place. Again, I don't see that happening because schools, these vendors do want our business.
It happens quite frequently at the college level, that's why I'm asking the
Sure.
questions.
Yeah, our data privacy laws are a little more stringent because college students can do whatever they want with whatever they want. And here we have so much data on kids. Like it might not seem like it's a lot, but we have a lot of data. And we need to make sure that everybody knows that we're not going to abuse that data. We're not going to just hand it out willy-nilly. And we're going to go through the process of making sure that if we do hand it out, that we're handing it out to somebody who is, trusted, vetted, and has a greater educational purpose.
And when you're looking at these programs, are you the one that's going through and verifying, doing essentially a risk assessment to it, and going into the website or whatnot and doing all the click-throughs? Because the click-throughs are what gets people, is if they don't go in far enough, they're agreeing to a term that they don't want to. So is that something that you've been
Correct.
doing?
Yes. So I would say that for the most part, yes, that is something I'm doing. That is for tools that as a district or as a school or as a classroom we're supporting. Now, if a kid were to go and sign up for something on their own, that's a different story. So with that comes also the need for more training on digital citizenship, how to be prepared for those types of things, how to acknowledge when something seems fishy or untrue or unsafe. So yes, all the tools that are on that list, I did do that. I also have a tool that I use to monitor the tools that are being used. So frequently I'll go into that tool, it's called Catch On. And we actually have a partnership with South Central Service Cooperative for a regional database as well, so we can pool those resources within the co-op. But to go in and see, like, I'll look at the top 40 trending applications. And if I see something on there that seems strange, I'm going to click on it, see who's using it, and go have a conversation with that person to find out why they're using it, what the purpose is. And it's not just to force compliance, but if we, through that process, also find something that is, just knocks it out of the park in terms of results, maybe that is something we should look into further to, invest in or train in. So there's a lot of opportunity to have conversation about that. I just had to initially make sure that the apps that we were using are compliant and that we're ready to go at this either 30 days before or 30 days after the start of the school year.
Okay, last question, I promise.
Sure.
Are you going to talk with all staff that before they put anything out or new, that they run it through you first?
Yes, so how it's gonna work is, to put it in a less friendly way, I guess, in a very short way, is to say, if kids are signing up for accounts, you have to talk to me first, period. If kids are not signing up for accounts and there's no data being transferred, then it's fine. Might not be ideal, but it's fine, legally speaking.
Good questions. Are there any more for Mike?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll move on to 6D, budget information.
Budget information, you can go in and look at historical cash if you would like. Matt's unable to be here tonight, but just following that trend like we have over the years, so.
Okay, moving on to 6E, committee reports.
The only meeting we had between last month and this month was, I asked Tim Burke and Tim Johnson to come in to talk through our director's contracts to try and get a little bit more clarity on them as I'm looking at offering the Director of Teaching and Learning and the Activities Director, Dean of Students, trying to figure out the best route to go and what we should be offering them, knowing they don't have experience or do have experience, and how they would fit into those contracts. We had a great conversation. I don't know how much we got done with it, but we did have a great conversation, and I think it's someplace we realize that we need to do some work on. Is there anything else you guys would add?
No. Any other questions? Item number 7, approval of the consent agenda. We have minutes from past meeting, financial documents, personal staff changes, and our JWP quota agreement. Just want to go through some of these?
The personnel staff changes. These are new hires that we've had. Jacob Hager. Brandon, what we'll do with him is we'll hire him, or we'll approve him, but he has to get out of his contract before he can sign his contract. Jeff is working with him on that. Sarah Mueller was earlier in the month, or earlier in the summer, she was hired as English teacher. She did get out of her contract, so she is on this one. Other than that, we have some volleyball coaches for junior high, assistant football coach, and then just the resignations. And then a retirement of Becky Monahan was our flex custodian.
Have we posted for then that custodian
We
position?
posted today for
Okay.
that position. So,
Any discussion, any further questions? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the under consent agenda.
That's Tim Elke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Kendra Hain. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes 6-0. Item number 8, old business. Go ahead.
approval of the transportation agreement with Palmer Bus Service. So Jenna Fromm is here from Palmer, and then also Tom Watson is online with us. If I can find where there he is. Hi, Tom, you're muted right now.
How about that?
There we go. Sounds good.
Greetings. I should probably let Jenna speak first. Huh? Good evening, school board members. I was just reflecting on the fact that this is about 15 years I've had the good fortune to work with you folks on transportation contracts. And it's, I can say this working with Palmer, whether Jenna was present or not. Working with Jenna, Chris Champlin, their CFO, has always been a very healthy conversation, very productive conversation, and one that I frankly look forward to. Let me just touch on a few highlights that are in this contract that are basically a little bit different than you've had in prior years. And I noticed in my transmittal memorandum, I've got to make one modification. Item 3, we've actually, on Friday when we wrapped this up, we actually agreed to an option for a 5th and 6th year to be determined by the end of January in year 4. So that would be in 2026. So this contract theoretically could go on to 2028. State law changed a few years ago to allow contracts to exceed a 4-year max to now can go to 10 years. And what we basically have done with those 2 out years, in addition to what we did with years 3 and 4, is those rates are indexed to what increase the legislature approves in the basic aid formula. You know that to be roughly the $6,500, $6,800 per kid. And the transportation is included in the general fund. So this increase is parked there in that way, but it allows by January of year 2, so that would be January of 2023, and actually January of 2025, that the parties would meet and discuss the contract and any provisions in that contract that they would want to address as they go forward. What it does is eliminates the need for us to go out and post legal notices and go through this procurement at that particular point in time. So you wouldn't do that again now for 6 years. The terms on the contract, Palmer's first had two proposals for us. One was a proposal very responsive to our RFQ that involved them purchasing some additional equipment, new equipment, I should say, and that would have averaged about 17% the first year, 4% the second year. And their alternate was to basically grandfather in their fleet of equipment, nothing older than they've operated the last 2 years. And that was at 12.2% with a second year at 3.5%. The contract in front of you, the rates basically are this. The first year, we average roughly about 8%. And what that is basically 6% on the rates. And there's a reducing increase of about 2% associated with fuel. And I'll explain that here in a second. As you well know, fuel and labor are the two issues that we run into headlong when talking about student transportation in Minnesota, probably most of the neighboring states. The rates, as I noted, for year 2 and years 3, 4, 5, 6 are all indexed to that basic aid formula. The difference is in year 2, there's a minimum of 3% or basic aid formula, whichever is greater. The other couple of items that are in here, we have taken a look at the impact on state aids on this particular contract. I've discussed with Jeremy and Matt a couple of changes to make going forward, including for school year 21-22, which final data obviously will be completed here in the next month or so, and then audits will be underway. So part of that has to do with allocating as part of a formula some administrative costs associated with the district managing transportation, which will allow us to add some state aid in busing the children going to the Lutheran school, as well as costs you incur for transporting children with special needs and or any children that are displaced or homeless, as it's called under the McKinney-Vento Act. I mentioned the equipment. Let me just talk with you a little bit about the fuel clause. The way the clause now works, Palmer raised that question with us, and that was part of the large increases that we saw from them in both their proposals, both their primary and alternate. Fuel was clearly an issue. In the prior contract that expires here at the end of July, basically to date you have a fuel clause in there, and that fuel clause means that anytime you're buying diesel or unleaded, minus the federal excise tax, which some of you probably know is 24.4 cents on diesel and 18.3 on unleaded. And on unleaded, incidentally, there is no tax credit for using vans, only yellow. So you split that cost. If you bought fuel at $3 a couple years ago, the index price was $2.75. Basically, what you did is you split that 25 cents, so you each paid 12.5 cents. Under the new agreement, we agreed in the first to kind of a two-step fuel clause. The district would pay 70%, Palmer 30%, when fuel prices exceed $3.50 a gallon. And I'll come back to that reasoning in a minute. And the second step is when fuel prices fall to, or I'm sorry, I should say, when it's above at $3.50, the district pays 70 and the district contractor pays 30. And when fuel falls between $2.75 and $3.50, that percentage drops to 60% for the district, 40% for the contractor. And when prices then hit that $2.75 mark, essentially what happens in those cases is we revert to the old contract language. Why are we doing that? Part of it was we're gambling on the risk a little bit that that risk will be mitigated somewhat as prices presumably will decrease. The good news is I just saw a news report this morning where we across the state of Minnesota, southern Minnesota apparently is an exception to some of this, but the prices have come down in the neighborhood of about 20 cents a gallon on unleaded in particular. And Palmer is starting to use more buses with unleaded fuel rather than diesel fuel. So we are thinking that as prices come down, the benefit to that is the district winds up with some of the larger portions of the savings in transporting children. We didn't want to put it onto the base because then you have a recurring increase associated with whatever that factor is. And so what it amounts to is we've basically added about 2% to the agreement as a result of that. And it will start to decrease as we pass over time. When we go to year 2, as I mentioned earlier, it's a 3% or the state aid increase, whichever is greater. And that compares to Palmer's request at 4 and 3.5 in their 2 proposals. Very last couple of items that I would touch on with you a little bit would be this. There was a discussion about adding technology to the contract. That would have been technology with respect to a parent app. I call it Where's the Bus? The vendors have different names for it. But it allows you to look at real-time, where you are with the route and your children obviously involved. It also would provide a routing application as for Palmer's purposes. And the other thing it allowed was adding GPS to all of their equipment, so they can monitor any number of things from fuel consumption to the operating and idling of buses and those kinds of matters. Some of that which involves cost savings measures. We pulled that out with the premise that can be handled as a separate item as the district wants to do that, whether you use ESSER funds or otherwise, but it wouldn't be adding it to the base because the capital investment is roughly about $19,000 for 3 years, and then after that capital cost wouldn't be built into the base that we have done that. So with that being said, the only other thing I've got in front of you on is a suggested motion to approve the contract for years August 22 through July 31 of 2024 with an option to extend for up to 4 additional contract years. And then 3 findings that I'm sure Jen is proud to see me have there. In terms they are a responsible provider and basically they provided the only response to the district specification, which is not a negative. The competitors know that Palmer's got a good relationship in many of these districts in southern Minnesota, so that speaks well for them. Any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to take.
So, Tom, I see on here that there's this provision 6.10 onboard cameras. So our buses right now do not have onboard cameras?
No, they do.
They do?
They do,
So
yeah,
then,
they do.
so this provision then, if there's a new bus that Palmer has to bring in and they have to put a camera in, the district is paying 50% of that camera?
That was the arrangement we had starting 4 years ago, and we've just retained it. But in many cases, they're buying their buses probably spec'd with cameras in them, but where there would be a need to acquire some additional. And keep in mind that many times the cameras that you're seeing in buses today, we've progressed from a single camera in a bus many years ago to where some of the conventional buses, the larger yellows, you could find 4 camera heads on some of those. So there's added features to those, and particularly with some of the smaller equipment, minibuses and vans, we'll see 2 and 3 cameras on those. So there is some significant improvement in that equipment as well.
Okay.
Any other questions I can address?
No more questions? Any
Thank you.
further discussion?
Yep.
We need a,
Here's the motion.
what's that?
The motion's on the screen.
I'll make a motion. Recommend a motion, findings for the motion to approve a contract,
Just the italicized.
just the italicized.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Don't you see it?
What? Make a motion
Right
to
here.
approve the student transportation
There you
contract,
go.
Palmer Bus, service of JWP, Minnesota, for 2 contract years commencing with August 1, 2022 and ending July 31st, 2024, with an option to extend for up to 4 additional contract years. Consistent with Minnesota statutes 2022, section 123B.52, subs 1 and 3. I can read this whole damn thing.
Just these next 3 lines.
Number 1, Palmer Bus Service of JWP Minnesota is responsible service providers consistent with applicable state law. Palmer, number 2, Palmer Bus Service of JWP Minnesota provided the district with the only quotation in response to the district's specifications. And number 3, all bus services will continue to be provided consistent with district policies and past practices for distances for student eligibility, distance to bus stops, and bus ride lengths.
I bet you're glad you made that motion. That was
I'll second
Tim
his
Burke.
motion.
You repeat.
That's Tim Elke. Any further discussion? Go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0.
I want you to know your superintendent was outstanding in working through this particular contract, and he more than met his obligations in doing a good job in getting this thing put together. So, thank you, Jeremy, very much for all your time with you.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for your hard work and dedication, and thank you to Jenna and Chris and Tim for working through this with us.
Thank you, we're very grateful to be here.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 9, new business. This is approving a resolution.
Resolution relating to approval of the Independent School District long-term facility maintenance plan review, expenditure, and statement of assurance. This is something we have to do yearly. Like I said, Matt was not able to be here tonight, but he has put the expenditure plan in here with our expenses for the year, which all come out looking good. And he said if we were at that's spending. Or yeah, if we were at statutory spending, then we would have to have a plan, but we are not, so everything is good. And then also the revenue coming in, projected revenue. Oh, this takes forever to open, I'm sorry. I opened it the wrong way, that's why. I had it open and I closed it. The only thing I can tell you about these two things is the one, when we approved the construction project, we talked about that we took out our bonds were for 10.3 million. And but it ended up coming up to be that there was 1.6 million that was unspoken for, unused at this point, which is great. So what Matt's been working on is going through and putting all the numbers together, and he has been in contact with Site Logic, but he thinks there'll be possibly over $2 million that are unspoken for. So he's working through that to figure out where the difference is between the 1.6 million and the just over 2 million that he has found.
Any further questions for that? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution relating to the approval of Independent School District number 2835, long-term facility maintenance plan, revenue expenditures, statement of insurance? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
That's
as
Tim El-
noted.
That's Tim Elke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So Sherry Bashner? Any more discussion? Move to a vote, or that's a,
Roll call. Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Johnson,
yes.
Dashner,
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
So Matt will, I have to sign the assurance, statement of assurances, and then Matt will put all this together and send it to the state by the end of the month.
Item number 9B, approval of meal prices for 2022 to 2023.
There's no increase, these are the same as they have been. The difference is now families have to go back to paying for lunches. So we've sent stuff out to all of the families about signing up for free and reduced lunches. And I don't know if we've received any back yet, Wendy.
Handful, yeah, there's,
Okay.
several have applied online, super slick and Infinite Campus. Just go down to the menu and go more meals and just fill in the information right online, or you can fill out the paper form, and I got one of those back today, so.
So we are pushing it out there to try and get more people to apply for the free and reduced lunches.
What happened to the adult lunches? They were on there and then they were off and then,
Matt was working on this afternoon, so I don't know what he did with those.
I think it was just that those weren't required federal pricings, and so the board didn't need to approve those
okay.
at this meeting.
Yeah.
My question was just gonna be why is adult so high compared to,
Students.
how is it comparable to the actual cost of the food? So that was my only question.
Okay. I don't have an answer to that, sorry.
Any more questions? Do we have a motion to approve the meal prices for 2022, 2023?
I'll make a motion to approve the meal prices for 2022 and 23.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Kendra Hain. Any more questions? We'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. Item 9C, to approve Jeremy Earler for designation of identified official with authority for the MDE External User Access Recertification System.
What this does is it allows myself and actually Wendy to go in and designate people to put their items in the state system. So we can designate Andrea to do different things, Matt or Mike to do different things, the principals to do different things on the state system. And then it all comes back to us and we just approve it, saying that it's all correct and everything. This is something we have to do on an annual basis.
Any questions? Do we have a motion to approve 9C?
I'll make a motion to approve as noted.
That's Tim Elke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's Kendra Hain. Move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. 9D, first reading of new policies with substantial changes.
Okay, I put this on there last Thursday when I got the new changes. And that's when the announcement came out that the pre-K and kindergarten limitations are coming in there. So I called Terry Morrow at MSBA, and they'll be coming out with more changes now. So these were the original changes that they made to policy 524. So the ones that we can take out are they have a line through them. The ones they're recommending on adding are just in red. So you can go ahead, look through. This follows the new law and statute by the state. So, and we'll be adding to it. So we'll have 3 readings of this. So by the 3rd reading, we'll make sure we have something in there from MSBA about the preschool through kindergarten timeline. So this is just first reading, introduction to, these are some changes that they're making. That they're suggesting, I shouldn't say that they're making.
Any questions on that? Move on to 9E. Approve the school age wraparound care organizational change proposal. assume that's why Andrea's here.
That is why Andrea's here. So Wendy, Andrea, mainly those two have been really working on this. They've talked to me about it. I thought it was a good idea that we bring it to the board. The board normally approves their salary schedule each year, and this affects it. And it makes sense to approve it actually in June for the upcoming school year. However, we didn't get to that, so we're here in July. So if we have to prorate, we don't have to prorate as far back. So Andrea and Wendy can talk about this.
So, first and foremost, I want you all to know how fortunate I am to have the staff that I do. And, a little bit earlier, we talked about how hard it is to find staff nowadays, for certain jobs. Wendy and I have done a lot of talking about this, I feel like for a while now. And so I feel like the proposal that we've put together will help us to retain good employees. And it also kind of aligns with or is competitive with rates in the area. We have had a staff leave to go work at Panera, for instance, or a fast food place that pays more than the job that person was doing here. And so taking care of our littles is a very important job, and with all of the talks that we've had in regards to it, along with the fact that this kind of just, the structure of this makes a little more sense than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've had a high school rate, a high school graduate rate, and kind of a rate that was aligned with a para. And that's kind of how things have gone. And so kind of looking at titling the positions differently. So you see here we have Mr. Erler, who oversees me, and then there would be some program leaders potentially, program assistants, and program aides. So our aides might be like the high school staff. Our program assistants might also be high school staff, but they have more experience. And so, we have a couple high school staff who've been here for a few years. They've taken on more responsibility than some of the others. They might do some of that program planning and take on more of a leadership role. And then our program leaders, they're halfway there already. They do a lot of assisting with overseeing the second wraparound programs. And so we kind of broke that down, and then based on that, discussed kind of what their wages would look like, in addition to taking into consideration wages and rates in the area.
What are we currently at for those rates?
We are currently at, oh gosh, Wendy, I ask you this like all the time, but 11, 12, and 13.
So you're saying the program leader is gonna get roughly almost a $4 an hour raise?
So the program leader, basically right now what we have is a program aide and maybe a program assistant. We have some program leaders, well, they're not program leaders right now. We have a couple staff who are doing some of the program lead responsibilities. They will be taking on a lot more responsibility.
So if this is like approved, then how do you pick who gets those titles? Is it open positions? Is it?
I mean, that's something that we can discuss, and if you feel like they need to be posted, we can certainly do that. It won't, obviously, yeah, I mean, if that's the route you would want to go, that's what we would do.
I'm just trying to understand. Is it additional heads?
No.
Or it's just who you have, it's just reorganizing and putting into
Yep,
categories?
it's just a reorganization. Mhm.
How many program leaders would you have, or could you have?
2,
And then as many assistants and aides as you would need.
yep. I mean, assistants, we're probably gonna have 2. as well. One who would be an assistant probably in the wraparound program and one in the SAC program. The way that we have those programs structured during the school year is they're in different locations in the building. So having one at each is likely what would happen, and then the rest would be program aides.
But going back to your question, Tim, we have two that are doing some of the program leaders right now. They're making $14.75 now, correct?
I think one's at 1465 and 1495.
Okay.
So is this, help me, do we do this as like 2-year contracts, or is this gonna be
This is
every year?
That's a year, they're on a yearly contract.
Okay, so, because I just don't remember us talking about the community ed positions the last couple of years as far as the increases. How's that been taken care of? Because if they're not in the non-certs and they're not in the certified,
They're, we determine them on their own. It comes to the board and the board approves it.
okay.
And we did that last year in September, if I remember right.
Does this just, this isn't out of the general fund, is this just out of the?
This comes out of community ed.
So, which is self-sufficient?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just, you're covering the costs with your budget?
Yep.
Yes.
Are you increasing the rates for SAC and wraparound?
We don't have a plan to increase them at the moment, but that is absolutely one way that we would make this work. There's also currently some child care stabilization grants that are out there that we have not written for or taken, based on discussions that I had with Mr. Erler and with Matt. It was decided that we would not apply for those. If needed, we could. I don't foresee that need at the moment, but that is definitely one way that we could do it.
So you're saying that individuals that you would label as program lead are doing some of the jobs
Yep.
listed there, but will add additional responsibility onto there?
Right. And so the positions within community ed in the past, the titles have been all over the place. So, so this will help really identify what positions are within our SAC program. It will help better identify what people's job responsibilities entail. We didn't put an hour expectation on each of these things, but I mean, that is something that we could think about and talk about too. These titles that Wendy and I came up with are based on, I'm part of the Minnesota Community Ed Association and also on statewide community ed director calls on a regular basis. These are kind of based on some minimum standards for SAC school age care programs in Minnesota. And so they have like guidelines out there for you that have these minimum standards listed. And so we took the stuff that's in here and kind of aligned it with that, in addition to what we need at JWP within these positions as well. So, so these positions and what's described within them will allow for myself to focus on more community ed, enrichment and recreation related stuff in addition to just overseeing the SAC program. And it will allow for some, maybe some more to be taken off of Nancy's plate a little bit. Her plate's pretty full with activities and community ed, and might give more time for facility stuff as well. So, yeah. What other questions?
You did open it up. What's the difference between a program leader's pay and para, starting pay? If you have paras that would also be interested in those positions? I can't remember what they start at.
Yeah, the para starting wage this coming school year is $15.10 an hour.
Okay.
The thing about community ed too, you know, where I look at this rate as well, like, my staff don't necessarily get offered benefits. And so in order to keep and retain staff, I feel like these wages are appropriate for like I said, for the job that they're doing, for the area that we're in. Like, I really want to find a way to keep my staff. They're good, they do a good job, and I think they deserve it. Any other questions?
Have you run any numbers to see what this difference in pay will affect the budget?
I don't have solid numbers for you. I can definitely get solid numbers for you. I can work with Matt and get those numbers for you. Matt has seen this. Matt is not concerned with this. And so, but I can definitely get that.
But this works within your budget. Your budget can support this?
And they work year round, right? I mean, they don't have time off other than when school's
Yeah.
closed for holidays and whatnot.
These are year-round employees. They don't get the benefits
Right.
that the others do. If you look at a program leader, and if you were to compare it to a paraprofessional, or a special ed paraprofessional that would make $15.10 an hour, there's a lot more duties here than what the paraprofessional is responsible for. And the paraprofessional does receive some benefits that these employees don't receive.
Is there a reason why we just do this at a yearly contract instead of every 2 years, like we do with the rest of our staff? Is that something we could look at, to do this every 2 years, to keep it on the same cycle? with-
Absolutely.
With, the rest of
So
them?
we would do it now, we would do it next year, and then next year we would write it in as a 2-year, where we would have that increase built in there, so they knew it coming in.
So when does this take effect if this is approved?
When would this take? This would go back to the 22-23, so it'd go back to July 1st of this year.
So you give some retro pay.
It'd
is
be
what it-
one retro paid check.
But then it
No,
would be
actually,
off cycle from, right?
The way the
kinda?
pay cycles are, if it's approved tonight, I haven't paid July 1st through 15th yet, so I wouldn't need to do retro pay.
Right.
But if you did this one, then they would be up next year for contract negotiations with the rest.
Yep.
Because this is just a 1-year contract.
Yep,
So then you would be on cycle with
with
the rest of
everybody
it.
else.
If we wanted to then go every 2 years instead of looking at this yearly. That's the only thing I was thinking of. If we keep it on cycle with the non-certified and certified staff, then it's all done every 2 years. And just a thought.
I like that idea.
I
it
did-
all makes
I do
sense.
too.
I think it would be very helpful to do it that way. And
Does-
to actually look at the contract, the contracts the way they are right now. We could do a little work on them.
That could help with the retention play too,
Right.
knowing that they get 2 years.
And right now, if we think about it, they're working out of contract because they don't have a signed contract right now.
And they're not represented by the union at all.
Nope.
Any more questions? We have a motion to approve the school-aged wraparound care organization change proposal.
I'll make a motion.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's Kendra Hayne. If there's no further discussion, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. Item number 9F. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Approval of the Janesville Utilities easement.
Okay, I had a lot of questions about this when Andrea from Utilities called me the other day and said, we're trying to get a hold of you so you guys can approve an easement. And I instantly thought, this is easement for the trail. It's not.
That's what I thought.
That's what I said.
So, a number of years ago, back when Bill was still here as superintendent, Nate started working on an easement because they ran utilities under our playground. So if we were ever to expand to the east and close Teal Street, we wouldn't have to worry about utilities because they're all under our playground, not in the roadway. So this is an easement saying that we give Janesville Utilities easement of that property if needed, but this occurred 4 or 5 years ago. They just got around to writing the paperwork now.
So, the one thing I would like and to see is the nomenclature on there with all this, the block 9 and block 8 and block, where's all this located? I mean, because that doesn't tell us anything. I thought this was for the walking path trail.
So did I, and that's why I called Nate, unfortunately, on Friday morning when he was working on all of the power issues to get more information, because I looked at that and said, this means nothing to me. And he told me it was about 300 feet, no, 30 feet off from Teal Street. So under our playground there is where they ran it.
So run to the west, going up onto the playground, probably up to where the basketball court is.
Yep, up in there to the boxes. There's one over here and the one over there. So it's running between those boxes.
So pretty much what if we pass this, we're giving them the right that if they have to go in there and dig it up, they can go in there and dig up our property, but then they have to replace it to back as what it was.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
No different than if we were a private owner or a private landowner, same thing.
Okay.
But if the replacement happens during the school year, it happens during the school year, right?
Yes.
If it's
We
something-
can't control when something goes down if
Mhm.
something were to happen.
Okay.
But I was, when they sent it to me, I was first, okay, this is for the trail, but
So
it's
the,
not.
the utilities are there?
They're already there. It's already in place.
Wouldn't they do that when they redid the road? 'Cause it's
When
just
they
weird they do,
redid
they
everything.
put them there and then they ask for the easement?
I think when they did the parking lot out here.
Okay.
And I think I remember them talking about it, but it just never came back up because they had to submit it. I mean,
Right.
but that was 6 years ago, 7
Yeah.
years ago.
When I asked Nate, and Nate said, well, this was back when Bill was superintendent. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do we have more questions? Utilities easement? Is there a motion to approve the Janesville Utilities easement?
I'll make a motion.
That's Tim Burke. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Tim Elke. If there's no further discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. Just a reminder that 9G was removed from the agenda and will likely be put on the next meeting.
Just for clarity purposes, should have we removed 9H then off also?
Just saw that.
I know. Well, we never did close
You
it,
never
so
closed it,
never
so there's no
closed it,
reason to
so-
reopen.
Yep.
Okay, move on to item number 10, approve resolution accepting donations.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution accepting donations with much thanks.
That's Tim Elke. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Sherry, should I read through them quick?
Sure.
Well, we always do, so I don't know if I can see them from here. We
Me
seek
too.
Area Foundation, $1,000. Lake Elysian Watershed Association for $500 for a 2022 scholarship. Douglas and Cheryl Lochner Wright, $500 for Lochner scholarship. Jason and Amy Westfall, $50 for football. And do we have a second on that?
We did.
Sherry.
Okay, that was Sherry.
Elke,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Dashner,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Item number 11, upcoming meetings. August 15th, regular school board meeting followed by a building and grounds committee. September 19th, regular school board meeting, committee meeting. October 3rd, study session followed by finance committee meeting.